Sometimes when I go through social media and I see all the selfies, selfie after selfie after selfie, people posting of themselves over and over again, those pictures where they're like looking up at the camera, and it's weird, but it almost feels like they're asking, like, do I exist? Do I exist? Like over and over and over and over again. And Emily Dickinson, I feel like she asked a similar question, not in a selfie, but in a poem.
To make you feel as confused as purest love, oh Emily.
Good morning and welcome to Lost for Words. I'm Sarah Woods, and today we're going to be exploring some more poetry of the lovely Miss Emily Dickinson. We're going to be exploring, watch her as she struggles with that feeling of, do I exist and who am I? Let's just jump straight into this. This is number 351, and here we go. I felt my life with both my hands to see if it was there. I held my spirit to the glass to prove it possibler. I turned my being round and paused at every pound to ask the owner's name for doubt that I should know the sound. I judged my features, jarred my hair. I pushed my dimples by and waited. If they twinkled back, conviction might of me. I told myself, take courage, friend. That was a former time, but we might learn to like the heaven as well as our old home. When Emily opens up this poem, she begins it with, I felt my life with both my hands to see if it was there. When I read that very beginning, I actually get two pictures that sort of like are fighting for visual space in my mind. And the first one is, I felt my life with both my hands to see if it was there. I could almost see her like grabbing her chest or her shoulders or her rib center. And I felt my life with both my hands to see if it was there. Just like picture her like just this intense, like, am I really here? Is my being here? Like, is it here? And then I also feel like I can see her at the same time. I felt my life with both my hands to see if it was there. I could almost see her like holding it. Like it's this thing that's out in front of her also. I held my life with both my hands to see if it was there. Like, is it this thing that she's examining out in front of her? Or is it like this, reaching in and like touching her own being? I held my spirit to the glass to prove it possibler. So she like really wants to see if her life is there. So now she says, I hold my spirit to the glass. So again, I see two things when I see this. I see her like, I see like a magnifying glass, and I see her like looking to see if it's there, like looking to see if it's there. And then I also can see her like standing in front of like a mirror, and it says, I turn my being round and paused at every pound. So you can almost see like this girl, you can see Emily standing in front of her mirror, and she's like turning and looking at herself from every angle, trying to see if she can see her life, to see if it's there. I feel like that's the part that kind of makes me think of people these days with taking selfies. Like I can just see like the whole world like out there like taking picture after picture of themselves from every angle, trying to see if their spirits, if like who they are is gonna like shine through. So I turned my being round and paused at every pound. I love that, pausing at every pound, because like like a person, if they weigh like 150 pounds, like you could just imagine these little chunks of pounds, and she's pausing at each one, trying to discover, actually the thing she's trying to discover is to ask the owner's name, is what she says, and paused at every pound to ask the owner's name. So you can imagine her being like, if my arm, Emily Dickinson's arm, she's pausing at each pound saying, and who owns you? And who owns you? And who owns you? Who owns you? Who owns you? She is inspecting herself to see who she is. And it says, for doubt that I should know the sound. To me, that line is kind of sad. Because she's saying that she's asking who the owner is of each pound, but she's saying she wouldn't know the sound when she hears it, kind of. Which, for me, when I read this, I feel like it should be her name that she hears, and that should be a familiar sound. But so to me, that's a little bit sad that she doesn't think she'll know the sound. Then it says, I judged my features, jarred my hair, I pushed my dimples by, and waited if they twinkled back, conviction might of me. So you can see her sort of like maybe in front of a mirror, and she is like pulling on her hair. She said she jars her hair. She pushes her dimples in, like all the little places, trying to see if it's going to twinkle back at her, if it's going to shine back at her and be like, yeah, I'm here. It's me. I'm here. You're here. We've gone from the first stanza where she is inspecting her spirit, her being, to the second stanza where she's inspecting her mass, her pound by pound. And then the third where she's inspecting her details, like her hair, her dimples, to the fourth stanza where she stops inspecting. She's not inspecting anymore. She's done with that. Now she is talking to herself. And she says, I told myself, take courage, friend. That was a former time, but we might learn to like the heaven as well as our old home. To me, this is such a weird little stanza because she switches from inspecting herself to talking to herself. And I think it's nice, though, that she says, take courage, friend. She's like, don't be afraid, be brave, and that she calls herself a friend. Because really, she could have inspected herself, her being, all of her body, who she is, and she could have been like, take courage, worm, or enemy, or, you know what I mean? Or she could have not taken, she could have said, you're hopeless, and then called herself something terrible. But she said, I told myself to take courage, friend. So she is talking to herself, and she considers herself her friend, and she is telling herself to be brave. She says, that was a former time. It's almost like this, I'm going to try to move on. And then it says, but we might learn to like the heaven as well as our old home. To me, this is an interesting little phrase because she's saying we is her and herself. But we might learn to like. So to me, that means that there's something that she doesn't like. And she's saying we might learn to like the heaven as well as our old home. So there's two different parts, almost like she's been split in two, like her old house and heaven. Like there's an old her and a new her. This also makes me wonder if all this inspection that she's been doing has been of her old home or her new home, this heaven or this resurrected self. Has she suddenly awakened and is finding herself, trying to get her bearings and see if she is still there after some experience. This last little stanza feels like a pep talk, sort of. All right, that was the past. We're going to move on. Don't completely love my old self or this new self, but we might learn to like them both. So it feels kind of like she just is telling herself to be brave. That's a lot if you think about it. If you were to take yourself and you were to go through some sort of metamorphosis, you imagine almost some sort of death to go from an old home to a heaven, a resurrected self. Be trying to discover who you were and who owned you. And you didn't and it sounds like she barely believed that it was her that owned herself. I feel like that would be a very exhausting thing to experience. That last stanza, so weird. And what was it that caused the movement between the two? Because it seems like they're two very separate things. Are those representations of herself? Her old home, her old self, heaven, her new resurrected self. And it just makes you wonder, like, what was the catalyst, the transition between those two selves? I guess it makes me hope that she heard the owner's name back in that second stanza. It wasn't somebody else's name. This makes me hope that this change from the old home to the new home is a metamorphosis, like a butterfly from an old self to a new self that's all her, and that's not a metamorphosis from being owned by one person to another person. She knows that her name is the sound that she should have heard and not somebody else's name. I think this is one of those poems that, like, if I could go back into time, would be like, Emily, let's have some tea, and I'd like to chat with you about this poem. Tell me what was going on, my friend. Have you ever had a season of your life when you have examined yourself that closely, when you have held your own spirit in your hands, that you've examined every part of you, all your details, and wondered if you were your own person or if you were somebody else's? Like if your voice was your own, if your spirit was your own, if your decisions were your own. Anyways, thank you for joining me on Lost for Words. I hope you have a lovely week.
You said you went in the seas, he wrote on. Well, you're Emily Dickinson. Oh, Emily, you didn't have to feel that way. Destiny of love doesn't need to wait, but you should have just forgotten the face he left amid your loneliness and decked your heart with joy and gladness. Instead, he went in the seas, he rode on. Well, it's just you, you're Emily Dickinson. You're Emily Dickinson.